In Lesson 2.5, you're going to be learning about prime and composite numbers. Remember, each day that you watch a video, you will need your whiteboard marker, and eraser, along with your math journal. For today's warm-up, just as we've done the past few days, you're going to number 1, 2, and 3 on your whiteboard. You're going to go ahead and multiply, find the product of 6 times 3, 4 times 7, and 5 times 5. Answers only. Remember to pause the video as needed. 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 7 is 28. And 5 times 5 is 25. You are welcome to use your multiplication chart, although it is the expectation of the district that you have them all memorized by December. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. Again, number 1, 2, and 3. 3 more basic multiplication facts. Please write the answers only. Pause the video. Number 1, 7 times 9 is 63. 7 times 8 is 56. And 9 times 8 is 72. Erase your whiteboard. Numbers 1, 2, and 3, and again, we'll extend those facts. Remember to figure out the basic fact first and add your zeros behind it. Go ahead and write answers only. Eight times 4 is 32 with a 0 behind it for 320. 9 times 5 is 45. Count your zeros and add them to the end to get a product of 4,500. 6 times 8 is 48. I count 2 zeros, add those behind to get 4,800. Today we're going to review also factor pairs. So at the top of your whiteboard, please write the numbers 2, then leave a little space and write 4, then 5, 10, 11, and 16. If you remember back a couple of lessons ago, we talked about factor pairs. Numbers multiplied together to give us a product. So if I list all the factor pairs for the number 2, please write these on your whiteboard with me. 1 times 2. And then remember how I talked about when you get to the turnaround fact, you know you've found all of those. And I know that I have all of them. For 4, please write down all the factor pairs. I have 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. When writing the factor pairs for 5, the only factor pairs are 1 and 5. 1 times 5. 10, please write 10 at the top of your whiteboard. I always start with 1 times itself. It's an even number, so I know 2 will be a factor. 2 times 5. Nothing times 3. If I go across my 4s on my multiplication chart, there's nothing times 4. But if I take 5 times 2, there's my turnaround fact. I know I have them all. For 11, the only factor pairs, 1 times 11, 1 times itself. And lastly, 16. We always start with 1 times itself. It's an even number, so I know 2 times something gives me 16. And 2 times 8 gives me 16. Nothing times 3. And 4 times 4. What do you notice about the factor pairs for 2, 5, and 11? What do you notice about them? You notice? I notice they only have 1 pair of factors. They have exactly 2 factors, where the other ones have more. And we give special name to these. These are what we call prime. These are prime numbers. Prime number means it has exactly two factors, 1 times itself. So the numbers that have more than two factors also have a special number. They're called composite. 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 So that's what we're learning about today in our lesson. So just a reminder that the numbers with two factors on our previous screen were 2, 5, and 11. Those are called prime numbers. The other numbers were 4, 10, and 16, and they had more than two factors, and they're called composite. A prime number is a counting number greater than 1 that has exactly two different factors, 1 and itself. A composite number is a counting number greater than 1 that has more than two different factors. Please note that the number 1 is not considered to be prime or composite. So we're going to be working in our math journal at this time. We are on journal page 44. So if you would open to journal page 44. And at the top it says classifying numbers as prime or composite. A couple of little reminders. Prime has exactly two factors. 1 and itself. So 1 times itself. And composite has more than two factors. So just remember that. They've done some of these for us. Number 1 says, list all the factors for each number in the table. Write P if the number is a prime number, or C if the number is composite. So they did number 2 for us. These are the ones that we did on the previous page. It had exactly two factors, so we put the letter P. We also worked on 4. If you remember back here, we worked on 4. 4 had more than two factors, so therefore it's composite, and I put a C. We also did 5, 10, and 11. So now we're going to work on some, maybe not all of the numbers since there are so many. I'm just going to use a little workspace off to the side. You could use your whiteboard, but let me just show you. 3. The two factors for 3 are just 1 and 3. That is it. So I'm going to write those over here. Again, remember this right here is something that you would probably put on your whiteboard. You don't want to write that directly on your math journal. So if it has exactly two factors, is it prime or composite? Exactly two factors, it is called prime. So we'll put a P for prime. Again, what I'm writing right now, the 6 would go on a whiteboard. So I'm going to write the factors of 6 out. We know that 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. So I'm going to put those factors next to the number 6, but I'm going to put them in order from smallest to largest. So 1 is a factor, 2 is a factor, 3 is a factor, and 6 is a factor. I'll now erase that so it's not in your way. If it has more than two factors, it is composite. Go ahead and put the letter C. Now again, I'm going to work off to the side. I would do this on my whiteboard if I were you, not in my math journal. I know I can always start with 1 times itself. There are no other factors for 7 other than 1 and 7. Go ahead and fill that out next to the number 7. If it has exactly two factors, 1 times itself, it's prime, and so we'll put the letter P for prime. Moving over to your whiteboard, if you want to write the number 8, I always start with 1 times itself, and there are other factors. It's an even number, so I know 2 times something, 2 times 4. The minute that I have more than 2 factors, I know it's composite, but I could keep going. 3 times nothing, 4 times 2. This is where I stop as soon as I get my turnaround fact. So the factors for 8 in order are 1, 2, 4, and 8. Because it has more than 2 factors, it is called composite. For 9, I know I can always start with 1 times 9, and the other factors are 3 times 3. So moving over to the left-hand column, my factors are 1, 3, I don't have to write it twice, and 9. It has more than 2 factors, so it is considered composite. 10 was done for us previously, as was 11. So I'm going to move over to the next screen. I'm going to keep going down rather than across. Again, remember prime has exactly 2 factors, 1 and exactly 2 factors, 1 in itself, and composite has more than 2 factors. Okay, so we just did 9. So I'm going to move down to 12. I would be doing this typically on my whiteboard, but you'll be able to see my thinking here. So 1 times 12, 1 times itself always. It's an even number, so I know 2 times something, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. If I kept going, I would get 4 times 2, which is the turnaround fact. So I know I have all of my factors. So next to 12, I'm going to put them in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And I'll erase this. It is more than 2 factors, so therefore it is composite. The next number, number 13. 13, I can always start with 1 times itself. There are no other factors for 13, so I just write down 1 and 13. If it has exactly 2 factors, 1 in itself, it's considered prime, so put a P for prime. 14. I always start with 1 times itself. It's an even number, so I know 2 is a factor. 2 times 7. Nothing times 3. Nothing times 4. Nothing times 5. Nothing times 6. And then I get back to 7 times 2. Once I hit that turnaround fact, I know that I have found all of my factors. For 14, I have 4 factors. 1, 2, 7, and 14. It has more than 2 factors, so it is a composite. 15. This is where knowing your facts really does help in everything that you're doing with math during this unit. So I always start with 1 times itself. It's not an even number, so I know 2 is not a factor. 3 times 5 are factors. Nothing times 4, but if I get to 5, I know 5 times 3. Here's my turnaround fact. I know I found all of my factors. I'll put them in order: 1, 3, 5, and 15. I know that it has more than 2 factors, so it's composite. We're going to do one more together. 16 we did previously. So I'm going to take 17. I always start with 1 times itself. Nothing times 2, nothing times 3. I could go on, and the next fact would be 17 times 1, and it would be the turnaround fact. So it has exactly 2 factors, 1 in itself, and therefore it's called prime. We won't worry at this time about completing the rest of them because it would just take an incredibly long time. So, you have 2 more questions on this page. Number 2, how many factors does each prime number have? It has exactly 2. Can a composite number have exactly 2 factors? No, because it would be called prime. So what you're going to do now is look back in your Schoology folder to see what you need to complete for the remainder of lesson 2-5.